What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 273 of Opinions May Vary. I am your host, JR. I have my co-host with me, Alex.
Hello.
Hey, Alex.
Hi.
Hey, it's been a long time. Joining us this week is artist Drew Meager. Drew, thanks so much for coming on.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
I'm excited for this one because I'm a little in the dark.
Mm-hmm.
Right now I've been doing my internet research and looking at the stuff that you had shown me back from, because I'm gonna hand this off to you,
Mm-hmm.
Alex, so you can give a proper what's going on.
I think it was last month, a mere week after Steampunk World's Fair.
Like literally a week after. And I was like, how are you doing that?
I traveled
tired.
I traveled to Waltham, Massachusetts, because they have a yearly steampunk show. They have an event called Watch City, which I've been to for a couple years. And it's nice because like half the town gets involved. It's on the town green. Some was down the way at the library. And in past years, the Industrial Museum ran it to fund the museum. And it's a really nice show. And so this year I'm walking through and I'm seeing a lot of I don't want to call it the same old, but like being so used to what has been at Waltham and being used to what has been at Steampunk World's Fair.
And having been there a week prior.
Yeah. And I also wanted to go see some friends of ours because Horror Specs was there. In fact.
No way.
Yeah. Nathan, I forget her name every time.
Sam?
No.
Is it Sam? It's not Sam.
It's not.
Fuck.
Level 6 Cleric is her Instagram. but they were like literally across the walk path from the Corey Press.
What is Corey Press?
Corey Press, it kind of blew my mind. I've never seen this setup before. So we'll get into asking Drew like how long he's been doing this for. But I saw a lot of like old-timey, old-fashioned like printed ink artwork. And it looked very like retro isn't the term because it's supposed to be so old, you know? And there was like some humor to it and some lightheartedness. It's like there's like figures that look legitimately like medieval, like knights or village people, but then there's aliens in the picture too. and there's Cthulhu's and skeletons, just all kinds of cool stuff. And like I couldn't pick just one thing that I would want because there was so much to choose from. And so I like, thanks for showing me your stuff. And I would leave and come back around because that's what you do at this show. You kind of like wander back through a few times. On my second trip, I got a better look at some stuff, saw things I didn't see the first time around. And then I realized these aren't even on paper. They're on pieces of wood, which blew my mind even more. And meagerly, I kind of like asked for a card because I knew like I might want to.
Did you just say meagerly?
I did. That was not on purpose.
Yeah.
It wasn't.
That was.
I swear.
Cards right in front of you. That's fine.
and I asked for a card because like I knew like I'm going to want to talk to this guy hopefully on the show later on. And like I also kind of like apologized for not buying anything yet. And he's like, I'll get you on a third pass. Which to be honest, like if I came back a third time, I possibly would have walked away with like 4 things because I couldn't have chosen just one. And then I looked up his Instagram and I got that led to the Corey Press, CoreyPress.com page, which is when I found out like more of how these images are made. And like, that's like another mind blow. Because this is a thing that I've learned for like 1 week in class back in high school. And it's one of those things that you just don't keep seeing. And I was like, this is excellent work. And I'm really digging A, how it's made, B, the context of
matter.
The subject of what it is. And like there's a nice variety of stuff and even like the style that he's using. So Drew, thank you for joining us. This has been my
saying all these nice things.
This has been
all the time we have for this week.
my lengthy intro. So what I don't remember. What do you call the medium that you're using?
I usually just default to block prints because if I call it like woodcut, that's kind of lying, even though it is cut stuff pressed to wood. When I first started like fiddling with this, I did woodcuts. I'm like completely self-taught. I never even had the week-long high school class. My first experience was I got a plank of wood that I found that I had in the basement, and got out the Dremel and just sat there, went, and then slowly cut away like my first Cthulhu. And I'm like, no, this isn't right. Like, there has to be a better way to do this. And so then I researched, okay, to do a woodcut, you need to actually get like a special fancy wood. You have to actually have good blades. I did a little investment there, started trying to carve away at that, made something that was okay, but not worth, I think, the amount of effort and also cuts when I managed to jam the gouge into the side of my hand.
Yep.
So then I moved on to lino, which I think most people do. Is they're like, okay, wood it's very, very fussy. There's only a couple people that I think really still do a lot of wood cuts.
Mm-hmm.
So I tried doing lino for a bit, and then I sort of hit on pressing things to wood. And the problem with pressing lino to wood is that linoleum is a fairly rigid, flat surface.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have a lot of bend to it. However, a lot of the plywood panels that I use, even like the straightest ones, because they're thin, have a very slight warp. And it's hard to make that conform to the super flat lino. Like if this was paper being draped over, that would be a lot easier to do, because when you're doing sort of printing to paper, you put your block down, you put your paper down, and then you cover it with something that kind of holds everything in place.
Right.
Wood doesn't play with that. So I eventually moved on to this pink stuff called Speedy Cut or Speedy Carve. And it's super nice. It's like a giant pencil eraser.
Huh.
And so I can carve into that, rinse it off, reuse it, so I don't have to addition things and number stuff and all that. So I use that, press into my wood. I do most of the stuff around my kitchen table, where I've got a small press that I can attach, and then nobody can have dinner there for about a week. I'm in production mode. But all this is done actually around the corner from where Giles Corey, if you remember him from The Crucible, the guy who was crushed to death for refusing to plead at the Salem witch trials.
Right.
So that's where the name of the thing came from, was the Corey Press. Since he was crushed to death near my house, I figured it was either that or open up a panini sandwich shop. And I don't really have that much of a cooking skill. So
paninis.
Oh,
Yep,
okay.
you put paninis in a panini press.
Yeah.
So really, those are the only two options. I mean,
There's
Yep.
all right.
yeah, there's nothing else.
There's a couple things in there I want to touch on quick.
you have follow-ups.
So like I said back in high school, because like one of the great things about me and Jared took
There are many.
Jared took music classes and I took art classes. So like he pays better attention to musical things, and I have like kind of a better eye for art. But then we also have friends who are way better art than both of us.
It's true.
So like I said, that week long class, I don't remember the name of what we were using. It might have been lino, but it was almost like a little square slab of clay, and it seemed like there was like a thing of burlap in between it to hold it together. And like he was saying, you gouge it, because you're like, think of like you're holding down a piece of paper that like you're writing on, but like you got to hold it in a certain way.
You're push writing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you have to.
And so when he's like, when I stab myself with the hand, that always happens, even though the art teacher warns you about it. And
it's reminiscent of that, because I'm very, very bad at art. Let's just set that right out there. And like I remember in middle school, you had that black paper, and when you scratch it, it turns rainbow.
Oh, yeah.
Rainbow colors, and you can make cool designs.
Right.
And I made like my name, like, and it was hung on the thing for everyone to make fun of.
right.
But that's the image I'm getting in my head. Is that
Okay. It's like that, but with knives that are in
Really
a
sharp,
in a
yeah.
half circle.
Yep.
okay?
So it's because it's got to give you the edge to gouge into,
Okay.
to dig up the negative.
Mm-hmm.
So even then,
So
like,
basically,
go ahead.
anything that isn't going to get inked is what has to be carved away. So some pieces, if you're doing sort of these big black areas, they're pretty fast, easy to do because you don't have to carve away a whole lot of stuff. But when you start getting into sort of the very fiddly stuff, I know you both are like comic book guys.
Yep.
So imagine inking, no shading. Like you can't really cross-hatch, no color. You can't really. You could do color, I guess, but that involves multiple blocks. So if you look at actually like a comic book page, I think that's a really good way of, and how that comic book page is formed. They'll give you an idea of kind of the steps that have to go into making one of these pieces.
So
if that makes sense.
So you have to like essentially see the image in the negative.
And also flipped left, right.
How do you do that? that instantly gave me a headache, and I've never even tried it.
Well, see, one of the nice things that I do is after I have the image, I'm like, all right, this is what I want to put on a piece of wood. I then have to transfer it onto the carving surface, and the act of transferring it, basically I have to trace the whole thing over again. So, you sketch the thing, you draw the thing final, then you sort of ink it into its sort of permanent form, and then you have to sort of sketch it or trace the ink over again, and then I can flip that and press it onto the Speedy Carve surface, which gives me that mirrored effect. And then hopefully the transfer will take and everything will be transferred nicely. That pink stuff picks up graphite very well. So if I use a sort of a loose graphite pencil, I can bring it over pretty quickly and then carve everything out. Takes about, 10 to 20 hours per block.
Jesus.
Okay, so if you browse his store, his Etsy link, one of his items is like a creepy Mothman Ouija board. So so that means every letter and number of the Ouija board he had to carve backwards.
Yes. Yeah, if you want to see real pain, look at the Dunwich Mystery Spot one, because all that writing at the bottom, I had to carve that out, and that one took a long time, and I was really hating actually including like complete sentences in it as opposed to just slogans like I normally do.
Oh yeah, like the King in Yellow as well.
Mm-hmm.
So,
by the way, if you go to the website CoreyPress.com, that will lead you to the Etsy shop as well. Well, it looks like the Etsy shop is also named Corey Press, so you can see the very things we are talking about. And of course, we'll plug all of Drew's stuff at the end of the episode. Drew, I got to say, it is very difficult to not call you Corey.
That's fine. The amount of people that come into my booth and go, "Are you Corey?" And they're like, "You know what? It's."
Yes, I am.
Sure. It's like 45 minutes until breakdown. Yeah, I'm
So let's like, I don't even know. I want to talk first. Like getting into this, how you found this art form, and also influences. Like, because when you browse the website, it's pretty basic: aliens,
right.
Lovecraft, and the rest.
Well, I'm based in Salem, so everything up here is witches or fishes. So I wanted to do something that wasn't that. And the only other regional stuff that we really have going for us that kind of fits the sort of spooky genre would be H.P. Lovecraft, who used to actually come up to visit Salem every 8 months or so. He based Arkham, which you might know from Arkham Asylum and all this other stuff, on Salem. Mm-hmm. So Marblehead, which is the next town over, it became Kingsport. Innsmouth is Gloucester, a little bit of Newburyport mixed in. Dunwich is out in western Massachusetts, and they're all inbred out there, even as they are in the story. So I figured I'd do something based around there as if this stuff was real. If you ever come up to Salem or at pretty much any old New England town, you're going to find a lot of these historical markers on the sides of houses saying, this house built for Obadiah, Crown and Shield in 1742 or something.
Yeah.
So I wanted to do something that could sort of evoke a sense of, wait, maybe this actually was real. And by carving it out and having it actually be ink and not just sort of something generated on a computer or done digitally and then printed out, I feel you get a little bit more reality with that, if that makes any sense, even though it's like, for a completely made up squid monster or something like that. And then for the UFO stuff, again, it's not witches. I have liked UFOs since I saw my first UFO when I was 8. and I know that the pause. It's a joke. I was at a library, and it was the Time Life Mysteries of the Universe set. The UFOs one. It was up on a high shelf, and I tried to get up and get it on the step stool and managed to knock the thing on my head. So I think from that moment, that was my UFO encounter that changed the course of my life.
It's probably more legitimate than most claims out there.
Yeah. So with the UFO stuff, it's it's one of those things that's a bit of a niche genre, but it's not so far removed from popular culture. Like if I show someone a picture of a gray alien, they're going to know what a gray alien is.
Yeah. If
I show someone a picture of Shub Niggurath, they're going to be like, "Oh my God, that goat is sick." So it was a way of being a little bit more marketable, maybe. Also doing something that I like. I had been listening to a lot of Kumail Nanjiani's X-Files files. So wanting to do something in that sort of realm was fun. Also, with a lot of the pieces that I do, if you want to talk about influences, I actually incorporate actual medieval woodcuts into most of my work. So I have to sort of redraw everything. For example, if you've seen the Inferentance series, that's the peasants running away from the UFO. Those are actually based on Hans Holbein's Dance of Death series, which was a book that he did. I want to say following one of the bad plagues of Europe, which really doesn't narrow it down, but I don't have the date in front of me. Which his whole series was, death coming upon all people. So it doesn't matter if you're a rich bishop, doesn't matter if you're a king or a peasant or a kid, you're going to die. One of the standard uplifting things that Germans love to contemplate late into the night. So I replaced it with the deaths and the skeletons with aliens. And then that over time became a little bit more complicated, so I don't just swap things out, actually putting in flying saucers and trying to add a little bit more imagery in the Birth of Sorrow. So Geburt der Trauer, you can see an alien trading information with a man who, if you look at him, he's got an eye in the pyramid on his hat. So he's obviously a member of the thus born Illuminati. And so I try to get into a bunch of conspiracy theory stuff. So basically it's just stuff that I'm interested in that I'm like, you know what? I would love to have this thing. I would love to buy this thing, but there's no way my wife would let me buy these things and hang them on the wall if I saw them in a store or at a shop. But if I'm the one that made them, then she has to like them.
She's required.
Yeah, it's actually hey, I worked really hard on that. It's like, but dear, it's a kid is being dragged away screaming by UFOs, and you have a child that's the same age. You're like, yeah, well, you'll be fine.
But I made it.
Yeah, but I made it. I worked really hard. Look, I even did a fancy frame.
You can't argue with that logic.
Yeah.
Drew just answered one of my questions. So
we're playing Jeopardy now.
Because regrettably, that's something I think I forgot to ask Michelle Greenwood. Was like, what was your the factor that made you decide to start selling this thing? It's like if you art for a hobby or for yourself, like what was the step that made you say, well, I think I could turn this into a business.
I could charge money for this.
Yeah. So I think you just nailed it there, Drew.
Well, there's a little bit also. I used to paint Warhammer figures and stuff like that as a hobby, and you could spend all this time painting up a squad of Khorne berserkers and I converted everyone else and everyone's covered in blood and I converted all this stuff. I mean, everything looks great.
Yeah.
And then you show it to someone and they're like, those look like little action figures. I have no context for this. I don't know what it is. So being able to sell the thing does get me a little bit of that artist validation. If someone is actually worth, willing to spend a whole $30 on one of my panels, then hey, that's great. Makes me feel good. Gives me something to do. It's proved to be surprisingly successful. I mean, not like I'm quitting my day job successful, but definitely worth the amount of time that I've invested into it.
Which I feel with me and Jared, as consumers who buy comic books or we'll go to different conventions or shows, or like we said, like a different, some kind of thing like a steampunk show. Like if you buy a print, like, you know, I know they just ran the printer and had 100 of these things made. Like, yes, they spent the work to sketch it out and lay out and
create the original
and
thing,
ink it and then paint it or digital, do whatever. But with these panels of wood, it's a more physical thing, and it feels like there's more to it.
Right.
It's like you feel like you're getting a larger value out of it.
And even though like printing as a technique is designed to make the same thing over and over again easily, all of my pieces are different just by nature of the wood.
Right.
And I think that's something that, like, if you wanted to have a perfect version of this image, you know, get a printer and you can print it out, I guess. But I mean, I'm not going to send you the file or anything, but you know.
But then there's no character to it.
Right. Like, yeah, because there'll be parts that are faded. There'll be parts that where the grain fought the ink a little bit more, or places that might be a little bit over inked or had a little bit more pressure, so they'll be darker. I mean, there are some pieces that when I do a print run, there is a bit of a failure rate for, hey, this piece of wood just was not ready to receive ink. Something either slipped, or there was a part that, even though I sand everything down before printing, just the grains were just too wide, if that makes any sense. So something will be all faded out in the middle of it, and that just kind of goes in the scrap heap, and, you know, c'est la vie.
Now, you just mentioned like a print run. Now, thinking about it, I imagine there's only so many printings you could do off of one of the blocks.
Actually, after the pink stuff, I can actually wash it in the sink. That's one of the nicest things about it. Like, I know there's an artist. Her name is Liv Rainey Smith. She's actually like, she's the, I don't want to call her a 500-pound gorilla. So she's the 500-pound whatever it is of the Lovecraftian woodcut genre. She's out on the West Coast. So because she still does straight to wood, she not only has to, like, you know, her stuff is very, very nice, but she has to charge based on, I only get, you know, 20 first edition pulls from a certain block. Then I can do a second edition, but the ink is going to start to pile up. Everything's going to get a little bit thicker. You're going to lose a little of that fine detail. And so she actually has to go through a big, like, numbering and editioning process. With my pink stuff, I don't have to do that. I can press. The only thing I have lost blocks in the past, but that's only because I was dumb and trying something new. So, like, thinking like, oh, what would happen if I glued this onto something? Oh, I guess that glue melts pink stuff. Well, oh well.
So you don't have to retire any of the blocks.
I don't have to retire anything. The only thing that will make me retire stuff is I can't bear to look at it anymore. As you get better at something and you see some of your earlier work, you're like, oh no.
That is always the artist struggle. Forever the artist struggle. I'm still looking at your stuff. I really dig your choices for the line work, because they, you know, like you were saying, some of the images you've pulled from original pieces and change a few things, but like you're not really going to find another version of a Cthulhu in an older woodcut. So like your choices for where you put the line work and everything, and like from here they look really smooth and they play really well.
Thank you. Yeah, for drawing all the fantastical stuff, I mean, like everyone else that is interested in Lovecraft and stuff, I've seen 500 pictures of, you know, Cthulhu. So I've got a sense of what everyone thinks he looks like. So for something like that, that's pretty easy. If you look at something like, say, the opener of The Way, the Yog Sothoth piece, like that one, I had a lot more fun because it was, well, basically the only description is tentacles and spheres. Yeah. And for that one, you don't see a lot. I mean, you see a lot of variation amongst different artists about what he looks like. Sometimes he's straight up flying spaghetti monster. Other times, if you've seen like Sandy Peterson's Cthulhu Wars, it's more of the spheres are more prominent and the tentacles are kind of just holding the sphere. So what I did for that was have this sort of massive tentacles that if you look at them, they don't actually make a whole lot of logical sense
Right.
About biology or anything like that, and I don't think they should.
Right.
But the spheres themselves are
We
laid
agree.
out to match the tree of life from the Kabbalah.
Yeah. I caught
Yeah.
that in there.
Yeah, and then I put some runes in there. I'm kind of a magpie when it comes to images. So I'll see something that looks neat. I'll save it somewhere, file it away, and then think how can I work this into something later on, which tends to get me into trouble at events, especially if I have any sort of rune or symbol, and I do an event here in Salem. I'll get people saying like, well, according to the book of the law, you're not using that particular symbol right. That was actually upside down, and I'm like, oh. Okay, number one, thanks for coming up to me to have an argument about magic with a K. I feel very, very welcomed into this circle now. But on the other hand, like I don't know what I can fake it. I think I'm semi-fluent in magic with a K, but I don't know what you're talking about. I just thought it looked neat. Sorry.
It's kind of like someone who doesn't know how to do tarot, and they start doing it. And then they turn every card right side up.
Right.
And it's like, no, if it's facing the other way, it means the opposite thing. Didn't you know that?
Yeah, but I want to look at the picture. Like, I want to see the picture.
I'm sorry, I'm not a tarot master yet.
I'm trying to think of like the comic book equivalent. Like what would like going up to an artist and be like, in panel 5 of page 7, when you drew Thor, you actually drew him with his hammer in the right hand, and it's historically known.
I was going to use Sinestro's ring.
Yeah, exactly. Historically, it's been proven that he is a lefty, and okay, whatever. If you want to create the art, you can create your art, but this is my art. Would you like to buy this?
Yeah. It's more. A better comparison might even be between, like, say, the comics and the movies, where you go like, well, actually, that's not the real Mantis, or well, actually, Drax wrong. So, we should really no, we had to make a character that would fit the movie because we needed someone to do X, Y, and Z, and that wasn't just another white dude. So we got Mantis. That's why she's here. I mean, I like reading about this stuff. I like studying it. I'm aware that for at least the magical tradition stuff, that the people that seriously do believe this stuff and take it seriously, they spend a lot of time studying that. But I'm not doing this for a sort of a spiritual need or anything like that. I'm doing it because I like it. I like the idea that there are the secret chiefs, the hidden occult powers that secretly control reality or stuff like that. I think that's just a cool concept. So I want to play with that. I don't want to have to play with, you have to wear the right kind of trousers and then bow in the grove on the third day of the, all that stuff. I'm not super interested in that. I'll have people that will ask me like, "Oh, are you a Mason?" I'll say, "No." I'm like, "Are you a member of a lodge?" "No, I'm not." How close did I get with this? Try to turn it and get them to talk about the stuff. But yeah.
I was briefly showing my niece some of this stuff because she is a budding artist, and I was telling her as she gets older and hopefully goes into high school and gets to discover more mediums. And I was trying to describe the medium of what you use, and we were looking through some of the stuff, and we came across Harbinger's Wake with
Nyarlathotep. Hotep.
I was close.
There's a reason why these are all supposed to be unspeakable names. So just do whatever you want.
But that particular one, I mean, it's walking away from a pile of corpses, but it looks kind of silly. It looks like another tentacle monster. And my niece started giggling, and I'm like, yeah, but it's a terrifying monster.
I mean, if you look through at some of the actual medieval woodcuts and texts and all that, a lot of that stuff looks goofy. I mean, it just looks straight up goofy. And if that's what how this things come across to people, hey, that's fine. It's I like that piece because of the sense of scale when you start to compare the birds.
Yeah.
You realize, oh wait, that thing is actually huge and it's actually farther away. But yeah, no, there's a lot of stuff. Like I have a 6-year-old, and he looks at my things, and sometimes he'll think something is completely hilarious,
Uh-huh.
and that's cool. That means I reached across and I got him.
Multiple age brackets.
That's right.
So in the past, JR has actually had to stop me from talking about Salem too much.
Okay.
Because I've been, he's like, yeah, kind of. I've been there a couple times in the past with friends, and I've been camping on Winter Island, and I've stayed overnight at a Victorian house bed and breakfast, and I've done one of the ghost tours that you mentioned on the About page. And so, like, when I was reading the About page and about Giles Corey?
Yep.
Giles.
Yep. Yep.
And I was like, well, yeah, he's the more weight guy with all the stones on him. Because there's a whole section of him in the Witch Museum in town. And but, like, there's additional stuff that I didn't know about in there. Like, one of the reasons he wouldn't confess anything was because that would disallow his children from his inheritance. And I was
That's
like, that wasn't in the museum.
Yeah. Oh, no, because they wanted to make him some sort of like martyr, but he actually accused his first wife. Like, he pointed the finger at someone so he could marry someone else.
Yeah.
Like, he wasn't a nice guy. It's why he was like well-known jerk, because he was more than happy to throw one wife under the bus, and then when it came around to be his turn, all he thought about was his kids and protecting all of his stuff. So he refused to plead. It wasn't like some act of defiance. It was a act of like stubbornness and greed at best.
Well, stuff is pretty important. I mean,
yeah. Well, like Salem Village stuff. I mean, you've got a cabin, maybe a nice stool. In my day job, I'm a librarian. And I work at the Danvers Library, which is what Salem Village used to be. So we actually have a big archive of Salem witch trials items, documents. Reverend Paris's journal and all this stuff is downstairs in the basement, as is a pretty good witchcraft book collection. So that's a place that I'll often go to sort of look to find imagery. And you'll find, a lot of these kind of like your niece or my son might think, semi-goofy looking devils and demons and all that. But to the people back then, it was kind of a serious deal, depending on which read of how the witch of, what your witch trial read is. If you think it was people actually believed that they were being possessed, or people were just using this as an excuse to commit some sort of class warfare type thing.
I get what you're saying, because if I think about like the old Chinese or Japanese demon masks or some of the dragon masks they would wear, like, and you see a picture of one that looks kind of silly and ridiculous, but then when you go to a museum and see the samurai armor and see like their manifestation of like the demon mask on a soldier, it's like, oh yeah, I don't want to see that coming at me.
No.
Right.
No. Nope.
Yeah, it's all about the context in which you see the stuff. Like the samurai mask might look goofy, but emerging into a darkened room that's covered in smoke while you're huddled in the corner, you're not going to be doing so well.
That's a real demon right now.
Yeah, you're like, oh, well, that's it for me, and then
Which I also chuckled reading, the About section where it's like, yeah, the ghost tours, like, come right around the corner of, what was it? Of your shop or your house or where?
We're on the Salem jail, but now you could actually go up. In the Salem jail is now actually a really good video game arcade / bar.
Ooh.
So you could come in within sight of where Giles Corey was crushed to death. You can play Street Fighter, and I think they have a new outdoor lawn area too, so you can play lawn jarts or whatever. I don't think they give you jarts anymore if you have beer in your hand, but washoes or something. Now Salem's an interesting place to live. Before moving up here or moving to Salem, I lived in Boston and Somerville and all that. I would come up to Salem every summer or so, and when my wife and I decided to look for a house, we decided, hey, this would be the good place. Turns out we bet wisely. This is like the new Somerville. for like small shops and boutiques, except it's a Somerville that has a month-long Halloween.
Yeah.
Right.
Every October, where everything just goes nuts, and Salem just will take anything spooky and just make it its own. So I figure, why not? Why can't I do the same thing? If I think aliens are spooky, great. If I think Mothman is spooky, he's from West Virginia, but I'll do something up here. That's totally fine. We had a I mentioned in my about page, but we had a Lizzie Borden museum here for a while, and Lizzie Borden is from like Fall River, which is other end of Massachusetts for those who don't know. But hey, you know what? It's Salem, so it's something that happened kind of in Massachusetts. So yeah, we might as well put it here.
The Lizzie Borden is closer to us than it is to you right now.
Yeah.
My wife is a distant relative of Lizzie Borden.
I remembered someone said they were really close. I don't remember that was her.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
That's our claim to fame.
There you go. I bet you sleep really well at night.
Oh yeah, just great.
Yeah.
Everything's great.
Yeah, it's fine.
The axes are locked up in the shed.
Oh, honey, I think I left the door unlocked. I just got to go downstairs. And okay, I won't be too long here.
Please don't lock the door and kill me.
Invest in axes.
There's one thing I haven't invested in. It's probably got to be axes.
Actually, she would be thinking that you would be locking away the axe. What if you gave her too many axes that when the moment came, she just couldn't decide?
Exactly.
And that would be the difference you need to get out the door.
That would be my saving grace. That
right.
We have a plan now. I'm glad we came.
Yeah.
She just can never listen to this.
I mean, she could swing one axe really well, but
40 times
six
even.
at a time.
That's right. And oh, honey, are you sure you want to use your good axe? And she's like, oh, next week. All right, you got me this time.
Don't want to get it dirty.
Oh, axes. Am I right?
How long have you been doing Quarry Press for?
I've been doing it for, actually selling stuff, I would say about 3 years now. I've been carving for, I want to say, 5. It took about 2 years to kind of find my groove about what kind of stuff I wanted to make and get to a level where I don't feel slightly embarrassed saying, hey, would you like to pay money for this picture of a monster? So it's been a learning experience. I think every one of these events that I go to, that steampunk event in Waltham was actually the first steampunk event that I've been to. I know I don't want to disparage you because if you've been to multiple of them, but I've always had that sort of let's call it the inherent goth disdain for steampunk.
I understand.
It's like steampunk is for goths who've discovered brown.
Yeah, that's been you've never heard that?
No.
Jared, that's been a catchphase for years.
Yeah.
That is not new.
Oh, that tickled me. That's good.
Well, that's why there's always there's a lot of a debate over what music is quote steampunk. It's like, well, they're just playing goth music
or pirate music.
Right.
Yeah.
But
go on.
Yeah, I like steampunk as an idea. I'm a huge fan of Tim Powers, the guy who I guess technically coined the phrase steampunk. So Anubis Gates is a great book, and I think one of the first steampunk books. But as the genre or subculture kind of took on a life of its own, it moved away from that stuff, the stuff that I was familiar with, and I just became, your standard old man going, well, kids these days, they don't even know who Tim Powers is. They're just gluing gears on
his stuff.
Yep.
Put those goggles on my top hat. Now I'm steampunk.
I was.
Oh,
go ahead.
At the Steampunk Festival, some of those outfits that people put together, they put a lot of work into that.
Yeah.
And I don't want to yuck on anyone else's yum. If that's something that they like to do and they want to show off their sort of maker artistry, instincts by putting that stuff together. I mean, I am literally being up till 3:00 in the morning pressing pictures of squid monsters onto pieces of wood. So I don't really have that high of a horse to judge from. But it's just. I don't know. It's a little bit of an alien culture almost, but it's just familiar enough that I can pick out the things that I know, being all right, I could recognize kind of this situation right here from a vampire LARP that I once did. So first of all, I should not be so smug. and because I was in a vampire LARP. But second of all, like these are just people out having fun, having a good time. I was really impressed with the response that I got from the people that actually made it that third trip back to my booth to buy stuff. I've learned that, like, when I set something up, when I set up my booth at one of these events, I just did the Salem Arts Festival last weekend. I can tell when people are walking by that they're going to come in, because there'll usually be people moving by. They're going to place A to place B, and then one of them will look at something in mine and then slow, and then just do this sort of slow turn back, and then their friends will be 2 or 3 stalls away before they turn and come back and try to see what the person who came in is looking at, and then they all sort of gather around and go through stuff for a little bit. It's neat. It's my stuff is a niche of a niche. To get that sort of response, even from you guys, wanting to talk with me, it's really, really flattering.
It's your stuff is going to appeal to, from my perspective, to a lot of people, because I feel there might be a sense of nostalgia for the big alien craze that was from, I don't know, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, and like it just hasn't been a recent thing. Which was weird. One of my older trips to Salem, we were walking past some shops, and there's a woman coming down the street wearing an alien mask, like a full head, like
as you do.
The neck and shoulders of the mask were tucked under her shirt, so it looked like her head was an alien. Unless it was an alien.
That wasn't a mask. That's Doris. She's.
It was an alien wearing a person costume.
Yeah, exactly. She just can't afford the rest of her suit.
She's saving up.
Yeah. And but it's like you said, you're immediately going to recognize it. And with the return of X-Files, but then, so many of the nerd fans and geeks who are a fan of like the darker stuff, and with H.P. Lovecraft becoming more and more and more popular, then all that's gonna, get picked out. And even just the creepy kids were into things that are creepy. One of my favorites.
That's right.
One of my favorites is the Petitioner.
Yeah.
Which is like the Egyptian door worshipping, and I'm like, this is fantastic. I don't know what's going on, but I'm really into it.
Well, that was my I wanted to draw a Gug. So those 2 figures on the side are Gugs, which are these servitor race. And the layout of that place actually comes from that Egyptian temple they have at the Met down in New York.
Oh, right.
So the layout is from... I actually, because I went down there and I took pictures of it, and so I used that layout as if the actual doors were open to sort of lay out how that whole piece would work. It's I like the stuff that you look at and you think like, oh, I think there might be something going on here. I'm not exactly sure what.
Yeah,
but there's definitely something going on here, which I think I'm starting to incorporate a little bit more, almost a bit of a narrative storytelling to some of the stuff that I do. I just finished recently a piece called The Exchange. I haven't actually printed enough up to put it up on Etsy yet, where it's about the mind transfer between the great race of Yith from a Lovecraft story, Shadows Out of Time, and a person, which I represent using the Vitruvian Man, that classic dude spread eagle pose, with his wang hanging out. And so, like, drawing that, when I was sketching it out, I kept showing it to my 6-year-old, asking, what do you think is going on here? And I got to the point where he says, like, I think that monster is controlling that guy's mind. And like, all right, that's cool. So you can look at it, even if you have no idea about Shadows Out of Time or the Great Race of Yith or any of that super nerdy stuff that I like, you can look at this and go like, that is a guy being mind controlled by a giant space monster. And I think that's kind of neat.
So how much of the, I mean, like you had mentioned, you might see a picture, an image that you like, and you'll take a picture, you'll kind of save it and file it away. How much of this is stuff that you just have in your head from something you've read in the past, and how much like do you research for?
When a piece starts with hey, I think it'd be cool if I did X, Y, and Z, and then I'll start looking around at images. There are a couple go-to sites that I have for looking at certain medieval images. There's this one medieval author named Olaus Magnusson, who wrote this book called A History of the Northern Peoples, and it was kind of like almost like an illustrated guide to like Scandinavia. And he has a lot of woodcuts in there, and so that's a good place to go. Like, all right, how did these people draw monsters that that lived in the mountains? Like, what do they think they looked like? And so you look at that, look at like sort of okay, how do you draw? Like, I've gotten pretty good at recreating medieval people running away from things, and then I'll take all these stuff and I'll kind of sketch out the elements that I'm making, bodge everything together, kind of layout wise by literally making copies of my sketches, inking them a bunch, and then sort of just laying them out physically on a piece of paper to get everything sort of spaced out how I like it, and then draw it over again.
Right.
It's a lot of Photoshop the hard way. I think it'd be a lot easier if I just did everything digitally, but I don't think it wouldn't have that same sort of fiddly feel that I like. I mean, of course, this thing has also meant that I have completely missed the golden age of television. Like all the TV shows that, the great shows, like, oh man, I would love to watch Legion, but you'd actually have to pay attention to that show.
Right.
So all I can really do, like, my face is always down carving if I'm sitting and the TV's on. So I end up watching or listening to a lot of podcasts, or I think the only show that I actually religiously follow is a show called Mountain Monsters, which is the best show on television. And truly, we are blessed for it being on the air. Also, because they repeat what's going on every 5 minutes, so if I'm not paying attention, I can look up and say, like, oh, the fact I fell over again, and then I can go look back down. So.
It's the essentials, you just got to get.
Yeah, it's the important things.
So, with this much practice, do you still stab yourself in the hand, or have you like deftly been able to avoid that?
I've gotten better about that. The other thing is, if I ever have the thought, well, I'm not that drunk, then that's like, you know what, I'm not going to do any carving, even though I say I'm not that drunk. Nah, let's just do some sketching, do some doodles, that. Let's not accidentally ruin a piece because I'm like, oh, I'll just carve through half that figure. Oh man,
right?
But no, I don't.
It's not like you can just put whiteout on it to fix something if you messed it up.
No. You can't just carve it sort of straight up and down when you're carving stuff out. The rubber will wiggle if you put pressure on it. So you have to sort of like construct these sort of mountains with flat tops. So it's actually like it's something you have to pay a lot of attention to, which means you have to go slow, which means you're not sort of applying a lot of pressure. So there's a lot less chance of sort of getting yourself in the hand.
Mm-hmm. And if it's kind of a rubbery substance, would there be some stretch to it? Well, that's what you meant by the wiggle, I guess.
yeah. There actually is some stretch. Yep.
Do you have did it take some trial and error to get the right ink? Like, did you just go with a certain type of ink, or did you research it, or did you try a few different kinds?
I've tried a few different types of ink. I use a archival sort of a thicker ink because it will sit on top of the wood grain a little bit better. There are some inks that are going to be a lot thinner, and they might soak into the wood, which has a little bleeding element to it. So that I'm pretty set on. I've started adding a little alcohol-based sort of like stamp pad ink type stuff to things. If you look at and see, like, say, the Tanis piece or anything that actually has different color on it, that's usually something stamped on either before or after the fact. And that, because it is an alcohol-based ink, it's going to soak into the wood and not be sort of raised up like the black ink is. Like if you touch one of my pieces, you can feel it. Like you can feel the bumps of where the ink is. But with like an alcohol stamp-based ink or something like that, it's going to soak into the wood, and you're not going to close your eyes and you wouldn't know it's there. But it's allowed me to do a couple neat things and try to add a little bit more variety, so it's not just black stuff stamped onto, wood.
Well, there's been like at least 5 times where you've referenced something, and I've wanted to go nerd, but we're 2 guys that sit in a room full of comic books who make a weekly purpose of talking about comics or toys.
If anything,
action
it's a
figure.
compliment.
Oh, like
You're one of us.
I'm like, he fits right in. One of our previous guests has been actively over the past 2 years, I think, building Space Marine armor cosplay for himself.
Live streaming it too.
Oh.
He's been live streaming a lot
Yeah,
lately.
he's been trying to stream some of his. He had to redo his helmet, I believe.
It's got to be
So
right.
it's got to be perfect.
That'd be exactly right.
Yeah. So, and we play D&D, and so some friends, when we referenced White Wolf, they're like, they catch on. They know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I think you have to have some sort of passion in your life for something that you're going to want to fiddle with, and if it's playing D&D, role playing games, working on your Space Marine armor, I think that your life kind of, or your passion expands to fill that part of your life. So the guy with the Space Marine armor, I assume he's got a garage. I mean, I don't have a garage, so it makes that a lot easier to do for him than it would be for me. And that sounds pretty cool. I'm actually, what I can see when I'm talking to you guys is I have a servo skull that I made a couple of years ago, sitting next to the lights. So I can totally understand that desire to make the prop and make the thing, and then maybe show it off somewhere.
yeah. We get it. Even if it's like, even if we're not into your thing, like, we'll respect it. Because essentially we're ultimately from the same family.
That's right. That's
Don't
right.
get us wrong here. We're 100% into this thing. Because like I'm sitting here, I'm like, okay, it's probably best that I didn't go to Watch City. A, because I was exhausted, and B, because, and like this sounds like a dick thing to say, but I would have spent a shitload of money at your booth, but I didn't. But
Yeah.
Is there any as far as like the future, Drew? Like, is there any? You mentioned you were just at a show last weekend. Like, is there anything upcoming for you that you're going to be appearing at?
Let's see. Coming up, but the summers are kind of slow for me. So the next stuff that I'm doing is I have the Salem Horror Festival is kicking off in September, where one of the dudes from Metallica has a vintage horror movie poster collection that he's going to have displayed at the Peabody Essex Museum, which is sort of the local museum here in town. So the Salem Horror Fest is going to be tied into that. I'm going to be at the Peabody Essex at one of their opening parties with a bunch of my carvings and a giant printing press, and people could sort of rearrange things together to make their own horror movie monster poster.
Oh, that sounds rad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it'd be a good time. Like the PM does a good show. I want to say every third Thursday of the month. So it's whatever the third Thursday in September is. And then in October, there's going to be a UFO convention here in Salem. So I figure, yes, I'm going to do that. So I'll probably have a little booth there. And then actually on Halloween weekend, rather than be in Salem, because all locals get out of town that weekend, I'm going to be down in Attleboro at the Jewelry City Steampunk Festival that they're kicking off for the first time this year.
Oh, I think I did hear about that one.
Yeah.
That is fantastic. If you like what you heard, if you like what you saw on the internet, go and check out. And if you're nearby, go and check out one of Drew's booths. Also, maybe buy something off the internet. You can see his work at coreypress.com. COREYPRESS. Can you tell I read a lot back on the phones during my day at work? coreypress.com. There's also an Etsy shop. I imagine if you search Corey Press, all one word, you'll find it pretty quickly. You can go take a look at all the things that we've been referencing here. I've literally been looking at it for the past 55 minutes. You can find aliens, and you can find Lovecraft, and you can find all the rest.
I've been a fan of some of the Instagram posts where he shows.
Yeah.
I followed as we were doing this episode. I was like, oh, okay, I got to go find that right now. But
you'll see the stuff in process on the Instagram, so you can get an idea of what's coming up, what's coming out, and all that. I think my next piece I'm working on is going to be based on this thing called the Shaver Mystery, which was this giant fandom war thing that happened back in the 1940s, and things like Amazing Stories and all that. It's some dude claimed that he was in telepathic communication with ancient beings that live beneath the earth, and a bunch of people believed him. And then a bunch of people didn't believe him. And then the two sides fought for, I want to say, at least 15 years.
Jesus. Good Lord. Corey, it was Corey, I just did it. I did it.
Yep.
Drew, God. I'm going to edit that out. Just kidding. It's always funny when I look like an idiot. Drew, it was an absolute pleasure, getting to meet you and actually putting a voice to the art here. I got to say, it's really stunning work, and hopefully I'll be able to see your booth in person myself. Until then, I'll have to live vicariously through Alex. But it was a true pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on and telling us all about making cool stuff.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
Absolutely, man. Like I said, absolute pleasure. Go check it out, CoreyPress.com. You can find that pretty much if you search that on all the social medias, Corey Press on Instagram, Corey Press on Etsy. If you're looking to look at the merch, go and check it out. It is good stuff. So that is going to do it for us this week. Again, huge thanks to you, Drew. Tons of fun. Good art.
Great.
I enjoy it. So until next
thank
week, I have been JR.
I'm Alex.
I guess I'm Drew.
And this has been episode 273 of Opinions May Vary.